She fled the storm and found a human, alive, armed, and laughing. Reaches its crescendo as Febra and Cole infiltrate the secret facility where Commander Vasich and Dr. Harlow converge. Under heavy fire, they trigger a catastrophic feedback loop in the storm arrays, causing the entire complex to implode in a spectacular display of lightning and destruction as they barely escape with their lives. The ion storm came without warning. Febra had been monitoring the navigation systems when the first electromagnetic surge hit, causing the holomaps to flicker and distort. As the navigation officer of the Zanari colony ship Vanguard, she was accustomed to space anomalies, but nothing like this. The ship's sensors had failed to detect the gathering storm until they were already caught in its outer edges. All hands, prepare for emergency protocols. Captain Thaw's voice echoed through the command deck, remarkably steady despite the chaos. The old Zanari's voice had always been a comfort to Febra, but now it carried a finality that sent chills across her blue-tinged skin. Another surge hit, stronger than the first. The ship lurched violently, throwing several crew members to the floor. Febra's hypersensitive ears detected the structural integrity alarms before they even sounded. The subtle vibrations in the hull, warning of imminent catastrophe. "Navigation! Report!" Captain Thaw demanded, gripping the command chair as the ship shuddered around them. "We're being pulled into the gravity well of the nearest planet," Febra responded, her fingers dancing across the console. "It's XJ-27, Captain." The designation hung in the air like a death sentence. XJ-27, classified as uninhabitable in the last survey. A jungle planet with toxic atmosphere, according to the reports. Not that it mattered now. The choice was no longer theirs. "Escape protocols initiated," announced the ship's AI as red emergency lights bathed the command deck in an ominous glow. "All personnel proceed to designated escape pods." Captain Thaw's eyes met Febra's across the chaos of the command deck. "Navigation Officer Febra, you know what to do. Save as many as you can. That's an order." Febra nodded, her training overriding her fear. 7 cycles since the colony's launch, and now it was ending like this, scattered across an uninhabitable world. As she sprinted through the corridors toward her designated escape pod, the ship groaned and twisted around her. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, separating her from the rest of the crew, alone. She reached the small pod, strapping herself into the pilot's seat as the ship began to break apart. Through the viewport, she caught one last glimpse of the Vanguard as it split into 3 massive sections, each trailing debris as they plummeted toward the planet below. Lightning from the alien storm flashed against the ship's hull, illuminating the Zanari colonial insignia, a reminder of the mission that had brought them here, to expand their civilization beyond their dying homeworld. The escape pod systems came online as it automatically detached from the doomed vessel. Febra's hands moved with practiced precision, adjusting the entry trajectory as best she could. The planet's atmosphere appeared through the viewport, thick clouds swirling with strange purple hues, unlike anything she had seen before. "Atmospheric entry in 10 seconds, announced the pod's computer. "Brace for impact." Febra closed her eyes, whispering the navigator's prayer. "Guide us through the darkness, to light beyond the void." The pod hit the atmosphere like a meteor, flames engulfing the viewport as it hurtled toward the surface. The heat shields screamed in protest, temperature gauges climbing beyond safe limits. Febra's teeth rattled in her skull as the pod shook violently. Warning alarms blared from every system. "Deploying emergency parachutes," the computer announced, though Febra could barely hear it over the cacophony of breaking metal and howling wind. The sudden jerk as the parachutes deployed was the last thing she felt before darkness claimed her. Pain was her first sensation upon waking, a dull, throbbing ache in her left leg, and a sharper pain across her ribs. Febra opened her eyes to harsh daylight filtering through a cracked viewport. The escape pod had come to rest at an angle, half buried in rich, dark soil. Through the shattered glass, she could see lush vegetation, enormous ferns with purple fronds that swayed gently in an alien breeze. Toxic atmosphere. She remembered with a jolt of panic, reaching for her emergency breathing apparatus. But as she fumbled with the straps, she paused. The pod's atmosphere analysis was running on backup power, and the readout gave her pause. Oxygen levels high, nitrogen present, trace elements within tolerable parameters. Breathable, not toxic at all. With cautious movements, Fibra unstrapped herself from the pilot's seat and took a tentative breath of the pod's air, which had already mixed with the planet's atmosphere through the cracked viewport. It smelled rich and earthy, with hints of something sweet, nothing like the toxic miasma described in the surveys. Another mystery to solve later. First, survival. She conducted a quick inventory of the pod's emergency supplies: a portable medkit, water purification tablets, nutrition bars, a multi-tool, and a standard-issue pulse pistol. The communication array was damaged beyond repair, and the emergency beacon was offline. She would need to fix that if she had any hope of rescue. Using the medkit's diagnostic scanner, she assessed her injuries: a minor fracture in her left fibula and 2 cracked ribs. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to slow her down. She applied a bone knitter patch to her leg and a stabilizing wrap around her ribs, then gathered the supplies into a pack. With determined movements, she forced open the pod's hatch and stepped onto the soil of XJ-27. The gravity was slightly stronger than shipboard standard, making her first steps awkward and pained. The air was warm and humid, filled with the sounds of alien insects and distant calls of what might be birds, or something else entirely. Fibra's hypersensitive ears twitched, detecting something unusual beyond the natural sounds of the jungle. Something mechanical. She strained to listen, rotating her head slightly to better capture the sound. There it was again, a faint electronic hum, coming from beyond a ridge about half a kilometer away. Not Zanari tech. The frequency was wrong. Something else. Something that shouldn't be on an uninhabited planet. She drew her pulse pistol and began a cautious approach, using the dense vegetation for cover. Her leg protested with each step, but the bone knitter was already working, dulling the pain to a manageable ache. As she crested the ridge, Fibra froze in disbelief. A human male stood in a small clearing, his back to her, as he examined what appeared to be the wreckage of another escape pod, not Zanari design. He was tall and lean, dressed in handcrafted clothing made from animal hides and plant fibers. His dark hair was tied back in a practical knot, revealing a tanned neck marked with a strange geometric tattoo. But what caught Fibra's attention was the weapon slung across his back. A sleek rifle with modular attachments that looked far more advanced than it should be, given his otherwise primitive appearance. As if sensing her presence, the human suddenly turned, the rifle swinging into his hands with practiced ease. Fibra raised her pulse pistol in response, and they stood frozen, weapons trained on each other across the clearing. Then, inexplicably, the human smiled and laughed. It was a warm sound, full of genuine amusement and perhaps relief, not the reaction Fibra had expected from a potentially hostile alien encounter. Her translator implant processed his words as he spoke. "Well," he said, lowering his rifle slightly, "you're definitely not a shadow stalker. Blue skin, Zanari insignia. Let me guess. That colonial vessel that just broke up in orbit was yours?" Fibra kept her weapon steady. "Who are you? How are you here? This planet is classified as uninhabitable." The human's smile widened. "Name's Cole. Been here 3 years, give or take a few months. As for uninhabitable," he gestured to the thriving jungle around them. "Someone clearly got their survey wrong. Or right, depending on who you ask." Before Fibra could respond, a chilling howl echoed through the trees. Close, and getting closer. Cole's expression shifted instantly from amusement to alert focus. "Shadow stalkers," he said, all humor gone from his voice. "Pack of 6, by the sound of it. We need to move. Now." "I'm not going anywhere with you," Febra insisted, though her ears had picked up the sounds of something large moving through the undergrowth. Multiple somethings, approaching fast. Cole sighed, slinging his rifle back over his shoulder. "Look, Blue. Febra. Then, you've got 2 choices. Stay here and become dinner for a pack of 6-legged predators with excellent night vision and a particular fondness for fresh meat. Or trust the only human on this planet who's managed to stay alive for 3 years. Your call." Another howl, closer now. Febra's ears twitched toward the sound instinctively. "Fine," she said, lowering her weapon reluctantly. "Lead the way." Cole nodded and set off at a brisk pace, moving with the confidence of someone who knew the terrain intimately. Febra followed, ignoring the protest from her injured leg. The bone knitter was working, but not fast enough for this unexpected hike. They moved through the jungle for nearly an hour, Cole setting a demanding pace that had Febra gritting her teeth against the pain. Just when she thought she couldn't take another step, he held up a hand for her to stop. "Home sweet home," he said, gesturing to what appeared to be solid rock face covered in vines. Febra looked at him skeptically. "A cliff?" Cole smiled again, that inexplicable warmth lighting his features. "Appearances can be deceiving. Something I think we both understand." He pushed aside a curtain of vines to reveal a narrow crevice in the rock. "Ladies first." Hesitating only briefly, Febra squeezed through the opening. It widened quickly into a tunnel that sloped gently downward, illuminated by a soft, blue-green glow that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. As they descended deeper, the tunnel opened into a cavernous space that took Febra's breath away. The cave was enormous, at least 30 meters across, with a high ceiling that disappeared into shadows. But it was what Cole had done with the space that was truly astonishing. The walls were coated with some kind of bioluminescent resin that provided ambient light. One section had been partitioned off with salvaged metal panels to create a living area, complete with a bed made from woven fibers and animal furs. A small hydroponic setup occupied another corner, growing what appeared to be edible plants. Solar panels, somehow rigged to channel sunlight from above, powered a workbench covered in tools and half-finished projects. Hidden defensive measures were subtly integrated into the cave's natural features: motion sensors, tripwires, and what looked like improvised explosive devices near the entrance. "Impressed?" Cole asked, setting down his rifle and shrugging off a pack Febra hadn't noticed before. 3 years gives you a lot of time to renovate." "How?" Febra managed, taking in the improbable sanctuary. "How is any of this possible? The planet was surveyed as toxic less than a decade ago." Cole's expression darkened momentarily. "Like I said, someone got their survey wrong, or right, depending on who was paying for the results." He gestured to a roughly constructed table and chairs. "Sit. Your leg needs rest. And I'm guessing you have questions." "So do I." Febra lowered herself gratefully onto one of the chairs, her injured leg throbbing now that the adrenaline was wearing off. Cole noticed her discomfort and knelt beside her, examining the bone knitter patch with practiced eyes. "Zanari medical tech," he murmured appreciatively. "Much better than what I've got. Mind if I take a look at your other injuries?" After a moment's hesitation, Febra nodded. Cole's hands were gentle as he examined her ribs, applying a salve from his own supplies that smelled of unfamiliar herbs, but immediately eased the pain. "You have medical training," Febra observed. Cole's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "Xenobiology, actually. Specialized in comparative physiology between species. Comes in handy when you're patching yourself up after a shadow stalker takes a swipe at you." "You're a scientist," Febra said, surprise evident in her voice. What are you doing stranded on a supposedly uninhabitable planet? That, Cole said, standing up and moving to a crude cooking area, is a very long story. One best told over dinner and tea. You must be starving. As if on cue. Fabra's stomach growled audibly. She hadn't eaten since before the storm hit the ship, and that felt like a lifetime ago. Cole busied himself preparing a meal from preserved meats and fresh vegetation. As he worked, Febra took the opportunity to study him more carefully. Despite his rugged appearance, there was an elegance to his movements, a precision that spoke of scientific training rather than military. The tattoo on his neck was partially visible now, not decorative as she had first thought, but a series of numbers and symbols that looked like some kind of identification code. "You're staring," Cole commented without turning around. "You're an anomaly," Febra replied simply. That earned another laugh. "Fair enough. But so are you. At least from my perspective. It's been 3 years since I've had a conversation with anyone other than myself. Having company, especially blue, Zanari company, is quite the surprise." He returned to the table with 2 steaming bowls of what looked like stew, along with a pot of fragrant tea. The food was unexpectedly delicious, rich and savory, with unfamiliar spices that tingled pleasantly on Febra's tongue. As they ate, Cole explained how he had come to be on XJ-27. He had been part of a human scientific expedition, or so he had believed. 6 months into their mission, he discovered the truth. The research was a cover for military operations testing experimental weapons technology. "Weather manipulation," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. They were using the planet's unique electromagnetic field to develop storm weapons, create ion disturbances powerful enough to disable ships, communications, even planetary defense systems. Sound familiar? Febra's spoon froze halfway to her mouth. "The storm that destroyed our ship." Cole nodded grimly. "Not natural. At least, not entirely. They've been perfecting the technology for years. Your colony ship was probably just in the wrong place at the wrong time, caught in a test firing or a system malfunction." "But the survey," Febra insisted. "It classified this planet as toxic, uninhabitable." "Perfect cover," Cole said. "No one investigates a toxic wasteland. No witnesses, no oversight, no questions. Except I started asking questions. Found out too much. So they decided I was a liability." "They tried to kill you." Cole's smile was bitter now. "They tried. I stole a data core with their research and went on the run. Shot down over the planet, ironically, by the very storm technology they were developing. They assumed I died in the crash." "But you survived." "I survived." Cole took a sip of his tea. "And I learned to live here. Turns out, when you're a xenobiologist with a survival obsession and plenty of time on your hands, you can make quite a nice home out of an uninhabitable planet." Febra processed this information, her mind racing with implications. "If what you're saying is true, then the destruction of our ship wasn't an accident. It was collateral damage," Cole finished for her. "In a weapons test that no one was supposed to know about." Silence fell between them, heavy with shared understanding. Outside, the light was fading, the jungle transitioning to night with a chorus of unfamiliar sounds. "Your colony ship," Cole finally said. "How many escaped?" Febra's chest tightened painfully. "I don't know. We were hit hard and fast. The ship broke apart before most of the escape protocols could be completed. I saw other pods launch. But..." Her voice trailed off. Cole reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of touching hers. "First thing tomorrow, we'll search for survivors. I know this terrain, and I have equipment that can detect Zanari tech signatures. If anyone else made it down alive, we'll find them." The simple promise of help, of not being alone in this, brought unexpected tears to Febra's eyes. She blinked them away quickly, uncomfortable with the display of vulnerability. "Thank you," she said formally, regaining her composure. Cole seemed to understand her need for space. He stood, gathering their empty bowls. "You should rest. Take the bed. I'll set up a sleeping roll out here. Your bone knitter will work better if you're horizontal for a few hours." Too exhausted to argue, Febra made her way to the partitioned sleeping area. The bed was surprisingly comfortable, fashioned from some kind of memory fiber that adjusted to her body's contours. As she lay down, the events of the day crashed over her in waves. The ship's destruction, her captain's final orders, the crash, meeting Cole. She had expected to die today. Instead, she found herself alive, in the care of a human exile on a planet that shouldn't be habitable. Nothing made sense anymore. Yet, as she drifted toward sleep, Febra found herself strangely comforted by the sounds of Cole moving quietly around his cave dwelling. The soft clink of utensils being washed, the rustle of fabric as he prepared his own bedding, the occasional hum of equipment being checked, ordinary sounds that anchored her to this new reality. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was a realization. For the first time since the storm hit, she wasn't afraid. The morning brought stiffness, but significantly less pain. Febra woke to the smell of something like coffee brewing and the soft sounds of Cole working at his bench. The bone knitter had done its job overnight. Her leg now only ached dully when she put weight on it. She emerged from the sleeping area to find Cole hunched over what appeared to be a modified scanner, his brow furrowed in concentration. He looked up at her approach, his expression brightening. "Morning, Blue. How's the leg?" "Functional," she replied, accepting the steaming mug he offered her. The liquid inside wasn't coffee, but something herbal with a surprisingly pleasant, bittersweet flavor. "What are you working on?" "Adjusting this scanner to pick up Zanari emergency frequencies," he explained, turning back to the device. "If there are other survivors, their pod should be transmitting locator signals." Febra moved closer, examining the scanner with interest. "That's human military tech." Cole corrected. "Now it's whatever I need it to be." He made a final adjustment and the device emitted a series of beeps. "There, that should do it." He handed her the scanner, and Febra's eyes widened as she saw the interface. He had indeed calibrated it to Zanari frequencies, a feat that should have been impossible without detailed knowledge of their communications protocols. "How did you—" "I told you. Xenobiology with a side of technical obsession," Cole said with a shrug, though his eyes didn't quite meet hers. "Besides, you'd be amazed what you can learn when you spend 3 years taking apart crashed ship components." There was more to it than that, Febra was certain. But she set aside her suspicions for now. Finding other survivors was the priority. They spent the morning preparing for their search. Cole packed supplies efficiently: water, food, medical kit, additional weapons including what looked like homemade explosives. Febra studied his movements, noting how he checked and double-checked the perimeter defenses before they left. This wasn't just survival instinct. It was the behavior of someone who expected to be hunted. As they emerged from the hidden entrance to Cole's cave dwelling, the jungle greeted them with a riot of colors and sounds. Enormous purple ferns stretched overhead, creating a dappled canopy that filtered the sunlight into shifting patterns on the forest floor. Small creatures scattered at their approach, six-legged rodent analogs and tiny, feathered reptiles that leaped from branch to branch. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Cole said, noticing her wonder. "Took me months to stop flinching at every sound, to see the beauty instead of just the danger." "It's nothing like the survey described," Febra admitted, ducking under a low-hanging vine covered in luminescent blue flowers. "That's because they lied," Cole replied simply. "Come on. The scanner is picking up something to the east." They moved through the jungle with purpose, Cole taking point and setting a pace that respected Febra's healing leg. The scanner led them through increasingly dense vegetation until they reached a small clearing where a massive tree had fallen. creating a natural shelter beneath its upturned roots. "Signals coming from under there," Febra said, examining the scanner. Cole approached cautiously, rifle ready. "Stay behind me!" Together they circled the fallen tree, looking for signs of an escape pod or survivors. Instead, they found a small, cylindrical device nestled in the tangle of roots, a Zanari emergency beacon, but not attached to any pod. "That's odd," Febra murmured, kneeling to examine it. "This is a ship-to-surface communication relay, not a pod beacon. It shouldn't be here unless someone placed it here deliberately," Cole finished, suddenly tense. He scanned the surrounding jungle, rifle raised. "We need to go, now." "Wait," Febra said, reaching for the device. "This might help us contact any other survivors." As her fingers touched the relay, the ground beneath them erupted in a shower of dirt and vegetation. Febra found herself thrown backward as Cole tackled her, rolling them both behind the massive tree trunk as pulse fire scorched the air where they had been standing. "Automated defense system," Cole hissed, his body covering hers protectively. The relay was bait. More pulse fire peppered their shelter, splintering wood and sending burning debris raining down on them. Febra drew her pistol, trying to locate the source of the attack. "There," she whispered, pointing to a small, hovering drone partially concealed in the foliage. "Zanari design, but modified." Cole nodded grimly. "I see it. Cover me." Before she could protest, he was moving, using the fallen tree as cover as he circled toward the drone's blind spot. Febra provided covering fire, her pulse pistol sending bolts of energy that forced the drone to adjust its position. With a sudden burst of speed, Cole leaped from cover, firing 3 precise shots that hit the drone's propulsion system. As it faltered, he threw one of his homemade explosives directly into its sensor array. The resulting explosion sent fragments of metal and circuitry raining through the clearing. Silence fell, broken only by the distant calls of startled wildlife. "Are you hit?" Cole asked, returning to Febra's side, his eyes scanning her for injuries. "No," she assured him, though her heart was racing. "But that drone, it was Zanari military grade, not colonial issue. What is it doing here?" Cole's expression darkened. "Same thing human military tech is doing here. This planet is more than just a weapons testing ground. It's some kind of joint operation." Febra shook her head in disbelief. "That's impossible. Zanari High Command would never cooperate with human military." "Officially, no," Cole agreed, helping her to her feet. "But unofficially, the perfect cover for developing weapons neither side wants to admit to having." He knelt beside the fallen drone, examining the wreckage with practiced eyes. After a moment, he pried open a damaged panel and extracted a small component. "Data core," he explained, pocketing the device. "Might tell us more about what we're dealing with. But first, we need to get back to the cave. If one drone found us, others will follow." Their return journey was tense and hurried, both of them alert for signs of pursuit. By the time they reached the hidden entrance to Cole's dwelling, the light was beginning to fade from the sky, casting long shadows through the jungle. Once inside, Cole immediately activated additional security measures, motion sensors, and what appeared to be sonic disruptors positioned near the entrance. Febra watched him work, her mind still processing what they had discovered. "You knew," she said finally. "You knew there was more going on here than just storm weapon testing." Cole's movement stilled. "I suspected," he admitted. "Found traces over the years, equipment with Zanari markings, unusual energy signatures that didn't match human tech. But nothing concrete until now." He connected the salvaged data core to a makeshift terminal, fingers moving rapidly across the interface. "Let's see what secrets our little drone friend was carrying." The screen flickered to life, displaying streams of encrypted data. Febra moved closer, recognizing the Zanari military cipher. "I can help with that," she offered. Navigation officers are trained in basic cryptography. Cole gave her an appraising look before sliding the terminal toward her. Be my guest. Working together, they managed to decrypt portions of the drone's operational data. What they found confirmed their worst fears. The drone was part of a security network protecting a hidden research facility, a joint venture between human and Zanari military forces, operating without the knowledge or sanction of either government. Project Stormrider, Febra read, her voice hollow. A collaborative effort to develop weather-based weapon systems using XJ-27's unique electromagnetic properties. Cole's expression was grim. And look at the mission parameters for these security drones. Seek and destroy any unauthorized personnel, human or Zanari. They're covering their tracks, Febra realized, making sure no one discovers what they're doing here. Which means, Cole added, if there were other survivors from your ship, these drones have likely already found them. The implication hung heavy between them. Febra felt sick at the thought of her fellow crew members being hunted down by their own military's technology. We have to do something, she said firmly. We have to stop this. Cole looked at her with surprise that quickly turned to respect. That's a tall order for two people against a military research facility. You have the data core from your original escape, Febra reminded him. Combined with what we found today, we might have enough to expose the operation. Assuming we can transmit it to someone who cares, Cole pointed out. And assuming we live long enough to try. Febra stood, wincing slightly, as her healing leg protested. I'm a Zanari navigation officer. My captain's last order was to save as many as I could. I failed my crew, but I can still honor that order by stopping whatever is happening on this planet. Cole was silent for a long moment, studying her with an intensity that made Febra's skin warm. Finally, he nodded. All right, Blue, let's plan a revolution. They spent the evening analyzing the data and formulating a strategy. According to the drone's navigational logs, the hidden research facility was located in a mountain range approximately 2 days' journey from their current position. The facility was heavily guarded, with both human and Zanari security forces working in uneasy cooperation. The storm arrays are here, Cole explained, pointing to a schematic they'd extracted from the data core. 7 towers arranged in a heptagonal pattern, channeling the planet's natural electromagnetic field into focused storm systems. If we could disable those arrays, Febra suggested, we could prevent them from creating more artificial storms. Cole shook his head. Not enough. They'd just rebuild. We need to destroy their research, their data, make it impossible for them to continue the project. And how exactly do we do that? Febra asked skeptically. Cole's smile was dangerous. We turn their own weapon against them. Use the arrays to create a feedback loop that will burn out the entire system, and probably take the facility with it. That sounds insane, Cole supplied. Desperate, suicidal. I was going to say effective, Febra finished, returning his smile with one of her own. They worked late into the night, refining their plan and preparing equipment. Cole modified his rifle with components from the drone, increasing its power output. Febra repurposed her escape pod's emergency beacon to create a device that could interface with the storm array's control systems. As they worked side by side, Febra found herself increasingly aware of Cole's presence, the warmth radiating from his body, the focused intensity in his eyes, the way his hands moved with precise confidence over the equipment. It was distracting, in a way she hadn't expected. Tea? Cole offered during a break, catching her watching him. Febra accepted the steaming mug gratefully. Thank you. For everything. Most humans would have left me to the shadow stalkers. Most Zanari would have shot me on sight, Cole countered with a gentle smile. Guess we're both exceptions to the rule. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their tea. 3 years without conversation, Febra said finally. That must have been difficult. Cole's gaze grew distant. You adapt, find ways to fill the silence. Talk to yourself, to the plants, to the shadow stalkers trying to eat you. His attempt at humor didn't quite reach his eyes. But yes, lonely doesn't begin to cover it. Impulsively, Fabra reached out, her blue-tinged fingers brushing against his. You're not alone anymore. The simple touch seemed to startle him, his eyes widening slightly before his fingers curled around hers. The contact sent an unexpected warmth through Fabra's chest. No, he agreed softly. I'm not. The moment stretched between them, fragile and charged with unspoken possibilities. Then Cole cleared his throat and gently withdrew his hand, returning to the equipment. We should finish these modifications, he said, his voice slightly rougher than before. Big day tomorrow. Fabra nodded, returning to her own work. But the lingering warmth of his touch stayed with her. They set out at first light, traveling light but well-armed. Cole had equipped them both with camouflage ponchos, made from local plant fibers that disrupted thermal imaging, a precaution against the facility's security systems. Fabra wore a pack containing their modified beacon, while Cole carried additional weapons and explosives. The journey took them through increasingly rough terrain, up steep ridges covered in sharp rock formations, across fast-flowing streams tinged purple with mineral deposits, and through dense thickets of vegetation that seemed determined to block their path. By nightfall of the first day, they had made good progress but were still at least a day's travel from their target. They made camp in a small cave, too shallow to be comfortable but deep enough to hide the small heat source Cole used to prepare their evening meal. As they ate, a comfortable silence settled between them, broken eventually by Cole's quiet voice. Why did you become a navigation officer? He asked, stirring the embers of their tiny fire. Fabra considered the question. Family tradition, initially. My mother served, her mother before her. But I stayed because I was good at it. There's something satisfying about plotting a course through the void, finding the safest path through danger. Ironic, given our current situation, Cole observed with a wry smile. What about you? Fabra asked. How does a xenobiologist end up stealing military secrets? Cole's expression sobered. I believed in something once. The pursuit of knowledge, understanding between species, peaceful exploration. Then, I discovered my research was being weaponized, used to determine the most effective ways to disable or destroy alien physiology. His hands clenched around his cup. They took my work meant to heal, to connect, and perverted it into something designed to kill. I couldn't let that stand. Fabra studied him in the dim light, seeing the pain and resolve etched in his features. You risked everything. And lost everything, he added quietly. Or so I thought until yesterday. Their eyes met across the small fire, and something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits caught in circumstances beyond their control, yet determined to forge their own path. Later, as they lay side by side in the darkness, separated by mere centimeters, yet carefully maintaining that distance, Fabra found herself whispering into the night. When this is over, if we survive, what will you do? Cole was silent for so long that she thought he might have fallen asleep. Finally, his voice came soft and uncertain. I don't know. I never expected to leave this planet alive. Never planned beyond survival. A pause. Then, what about you? Fabra realized she had no answer. Her ship was destroyed. Her crew likely dead. Her mission failed. Her old life had ended in that ion storm. What remained was uncharted territory. I don't know either, she admitted. But I think I'd like to find out. In the darkness, she felt Cole's hand find hers, fingers intertwining. Neither spoke again, but they remained connected as sleep claimed them, a small defiance against the isolation both had endured. The second day of travel brought them to the edge of the mountain range where the facility was hidden. From their vantage point on a high ridge, they could see the 7 towers of the storm array, massive structures of metal and composite materials that rose like spears from the mountain peaks, their tips disappearing into the clouds. "There's the facility," Cole said, pointing to a structure nestled in the valley between the towers. "Main research complex, power generators, barracks, at least 50 personnel, based on the security logs we decrypted." Febra studied the layout through a pair of modified binoculars. "Heavy security on all approaches, drone patrols, ground sensors, armed guards. But no one looking for an attack from above," Cole noted, gesturing to a steep cliff that overlooked the facility. "That's our entry point." "You're suggesting we climb that?" Febra asked skeptically, eyeing the nearly vertical rock face. Cole's grin was infectious. "I've had 3 years to explore these mountains. There's a hidden route, challenging, but doable." As promised, Cole led them through a series of narrow ravines and natural tunnels that gradually ascended the mountainside, bypassing the most obvious security measures. By late afternoon, they had reached a position directly above the facility, concealed among boulder formations that provided both cover and a clear view of their target. "Now we wait for nightfall," Cole whispered, settling into their hiding spot. "Security shift change is at 2200 hours, based on the patrol patterns." Febra nodded, using the time to make final adjustments to their modified beacon. If their plan worked, the device would infiltrate the storm array's control systems and initiate a catastrophic feedback loop, using the facility's own power against it. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple, Cole suddenly stiffened beside her. "Movement," he murmured, adjusting his binoculars. "South entrance. Some kind of commotion." Febra shifted to get a better view. A transport vehicle had arrived at the facility, sleek and black, with no markings but unmistakably of Zanari design. As they watched, a small delegation emerged from the facility to greet the new arrivals. "That's Commander Vasich," Febra gasped, recognizing the tall, distinguished Zanari officer at the head of the welcoming party. "He's Zanari Special Operations. What is he doing here?" "Probably the same thing as her," Cole said grimly, pointing to a second transport approaching from the opposite direction, this one human-made. "Dr. Evelyn Harlow, lead researcher on the original storm weapon project." The human woman who stepped from the vehicle was tall and severe, her white hair pulled back in a tight bun, her movements precise and commanding. She and Commander Vasich approached each other with formal nods. No warmth, just professional acknowledgement between co-conspirators. "This complicates things," Cole muttered. "Vasich and Harlow wouldn't be here together unless something big was happening." As if in answer to his observation, the facility's external lights suddenly powered up, illuminating the storm arrays. Energy began to visibly flow between the towers, creating a web of crackling power above the complex. "They're activating the arrays," Febra realized. "They're going to create another storm." Cole's expression hardened. "We need to move now, before they complete the power-up sequence." Their descent to the facility was rapid and reckless, using the distraction of the arriving dignitaries to slip past perimeter guards. The facility itself was a maze of corridors and security checkpoints. But Cole had studied the schematics thoroughly, leading them through maintenance tunnels and air circulation systems. They encountered their first real resistance outside the central control room. 2 guards, 1 human and 1 Zanari, both armed with standard-issue pulse rifles. "I'll create a diversion," Cole whispered, reaching for one of his explosive devices. "You get to the control room." Febra caught his arm. "Together," she insisted. "We do this together." After a brief hesitation, Cole nodded. "On my mark, then." The diversion was simple, but effective. A small explosive thrown down an adjacent corridor, drawing the guards' attention just long enough for Cole and Febra to neutralize them with well-placed stun shots. The guards' access cards gave them entry to the control room, which they found surprisingly empty, the technicians apparently summoned to attend the demonstration for the visiting officials. Perfect timing, Cole muttered, moving quickly to the main console. They've initiated the storm sequence but haven't completed targeting. We can use that. Febra connected their modified beacon to the system, her fingers dancing across the interface as she uploaded the override codes Cole had developed. The central monitor displayed the storm array's status, energy levels rising, approaching critical threshold. We have maybe 5 minutes before someone notices the system's been compromised, Cole warned, positioning himself near the door with his rifle ready. Won't need that long, Febra assured him, her focus entirely on the task. The override was working, redirecting the building energy back into the facility's own power grid, creating the feedback loop they had planned. A warning klaxon suddenly blared through the complex. On the security monitors, they could see personnel rushing toward the control room, led by Commander Vasich and Dr. Harlow themselves. "Time's up," Cole announced grimly. "Is it done?" "Almost," Febra replied, fingers flying over the controls. "Need 30 more seconds to lock in the feedback loop." The door to the control room slid open with a hydraulic hiss, and Cole opened fire immediately, forcing the first wave of security personnel to take cover. Pulse fire answered his attack, scorching the walls around them. "Febra!" Cole shouted over the cacophony. "We need to go!" "Done!" she called back, slamming her hand down on the final command sequence. The entire facility shuddered as power surged through systems never designed to handle such energy levels. Lights flickered, consoles sparked, and the floor beneath them trembled ominously. Cole grabbed her hand, pulling her toward a maintenance shaft in the corner of the room. They crawled through the narrow space as the facility's systems began to fail catastrophically around them. Power conduits rupturing, structural supports buckling, fires breaking out across multiple levels. They emerged onto a catwalk overlooking the main research area, just as Commander Vasich and Dr. Harlow entered from the opposite side, both armed and furious. "You!" Vasich snarled, recognizing Febra's Zanari uniform. "Navigation officer, you are committing treason against your people." "And you're conspiring with the enemy to develop illegal weapons," Febra shot back. "Weapons that killed my ship, my captain, my crew." Dr. Harlow's cold eyes fixed on Cole. "Dr. Michaels, still causing problems. I see. The data core you stole, where is it?" Cole raised his rifle, pointing it steadily at the human scientist. "Somewhere you'll never find it. Just like the research you're about to lose." As if to punctuate his words, a massive surge of energy tore through the facility, sending equipment crashing to the floor and opening a fissure in the far wall. The storm arrays were feeding energy back into the complex at an exponential rate, just as they had planned. "This facility will be destroyed in minutes," Febra announced. "Along with all your research, it's over." "You fool!" Dr. Harlow shouted, her composure finally cracking. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The storm weapon was the answer, the solution to the resource wars, to interspecies conflict. Controlled weather means controlled populations." "It means death and destruction," Cole corrected her, "and we're ending it." Commander Vasich raised his weapon, but another energy surge rocked the catwalk, throwing off his aim. The shot went wide, striking a power junction instead. The resulting explosion sent shrapnel flying in all directions. Febra felt a sharp pain in her side but ignored it, focusing on their escape route. "Cole, the emergency exit through the loading bay." Together, they ran, navigating the increasingly unstable facility as it tore itself apart around them. Behind them, they could hear Vasich shouting orders, organizing a pursuit even as the complex collapsed. The loading bay was chaos, personnel scrambling for transport vehicles, alarms blaring, emergency protocols failing as systems shut down. Cole and Febra sprinted across the open space, dodging debris and panicked workers. A pulse blast struck the ground at Febra's feet, sending her stumbling. Cole caught her before she fell, half carrying her toward the exit. Another shot, closer this time. Cole grunted in pain but kept moving. They burst through the emergency doors into the night air, just as the first storm array collapsed, striking the main power generator in a spectacular explosion that lit up the sky. The shockwave threw them to the ground, Cole instinctively covering Febra with his body as debris rained down around them. "Run," he gasped, pulling her to her feet. "Into the forest. Now." They ran, ignoring pain and exhaustion, driven by pure survival instinct. Behind them, the facility continued to destroy itself, each explosion more devastating than the last. The storm arrays toppled one by one, their energy released in blinding flashes that turned night to day. They didn't stop until they reached the dense jungle, the sounds of destruction fading behind them. Only then did Febra realize Cole was wounded. A pulse blast had caught him in the shoulder, burning through his clothing to the flesh beneath. "You're hurt," she said, reaching for him. "So are you," he replied, nodding to the blood staining her side, where a piece of shrapnel had torn through her uniform. They treated each other's wounds as best they could with their limited supplies, then continued moving, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the destroyed facility. By dawn, they had reached a high ridge overlooking the valley where the research complex had stood. Nothing remained but smoking ruins. The storm arrays had collapsed entirely, their twisted metal skeletons jutting from the mountainside like broken bones. The main facility was a crater, still smoldering in the early morning light. "We did it," Febra said softly, leaning against Cole as exhaustion finally claimed her. "It's destroyed." Cole nodded, his arm around her waist, supporting her weight. "The data core too. I left it in the control room. It's nothing but atoms now." "What happens next?" Febra asked, voicing the question that had haunted her since their whispered conversation in the cave. "They'll hunt us," Cole said simply. "Both sides. Vasek, Harlow. If they survived, they won't stop until they find us. We know too much." "So we run?" Cole turned to her, his expression softening as he looked into her eyes. "We disappear. This planet is vast, and we're the only ones who know it's not uninhabitable. We can go somewhere they'll never find us." "Together?" Febra asked, the word carrying more weight than she had intended. Cole's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheekbone. "Together," he confirmed, before leaning down to press his lips gently against hers. The kiss was brief, but perfect. A promise, a beginning, a defiance against everything that had tried to destroy them. When they separated, Febra felt something she hadn't experienced since before the ion storm: hope. They made their slow, careful way down from the ridge, supporting each other as they walked. Their immediate plan was simple: return to Cole's cave dwelling to recover, gather supplies, and then journey to an untouched valley Cole had discovered years earlier, but never settled. "It's beautiful," he told her as they traveled. "Waterfalls that glow blue at night, fruit trees with silver leaves, natural hot springs. Perfect place to disappear. Perfect place to begin again," Febra added. It took them nearly a week to reach Cole's cave, their progress slowed by their injuries and the need to avoid potential search parties. By the time they arrived, both were exhausted but healing, their wounds responding well to the combination of Zanari medical technology and Cole's natural remedies. They spent another 2 weeks preparing for the longer journey ahead, gathering supplies and modifying equipment. During this time, they established a new rhythm together, cooking meals, planning routes, sharing stories of their lives before XJ-27. At night, they no longer maintained that careful distance. Instead, they found comfort in each other's arms, discovering a connection that transcended their different species and histories. On the morning of their departure, Febra stood at the entrance to the cave that had been Cole's home for 3 years, watching as he made one final sweep of the space, collecting anything useful and destroying anything that might identify them. "Ready?" she asked when he joined her, his pack secured on his shoulders. Cole took her hand, intertwining their fingers in what had become a familiar gesture of connection. "Ready." They emerged into the jungle, setting course for the distant valley that would become their sanctuary. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with dangers both natural and human-made. But as they walked side by side, Febra realized that Captain Thaw's final order, to save as many as she could, had taken on new meaning. She couldn't save her crew, but she had saved Cole, and together, they had saved countless future lives by destroying the storm weapon. Perhaps that was enough. Perhaps that was what duty truly meant. Not blind obedience to command, but the courage to protect life, whatever form it took. As they crested a hill, the valley came into view for the first time, a verdant paradise nestled between towering mountains. Just as Cole had described, sunlight sparkled off distant waterfalls, and flocks of winged creatures soared through the clear sky. "Home," Cole said simply, his voice filled with wonder. Febra squeezed his hand. "Home," she agreed. Together, they began their descent into the valley, leaving behind the wreckage of military ambition and embracing the uncertain future they would build together, one day at a time, on a planet that the rest of the universe believed uninhabitable, but which they had transformed, against all odds, into a sanctuary.